We will not buy an armistice by turning over human beings for slaughter or slavery. Well, who said that? Oh, wow, he did, huh? Oh, those are tough words. But, I mean, that settles that, I guess. Hey, remember Napoleon declared the armistice of Clausewitz the greatest mistake of his life? And, what? What do you mean, why? Well, look it up. You're in the field, and you don't have a magic box to look things up on. Yeah, I guess, okay. Well, it was in 1813, right? And it all ended with Austria joining the Sixth Coalition and declaring war on France. Yeah, that was the coalition that finally beat Napoleon and sent him into exile. Yeah, the things you learn, huh? Huh? Well, it also eventually resulted in the 1814 union of Sweden and Norway. Yeah, Bernadotte was French. Yeah, the Swedish royal family is still the Bernadottes. Yeah. Okay, see ya. May 5th, 1952. This is a limited war at this point, right? And yet, there are ambushes and patrols every night on both sides. Let's take a good look at one of them. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is the Korean War. Last week, U.S. President Harry Truman accepted Dwight Eisenhower's resignation from his military posts so that he, the latter, can run for president. So Truman is soon sending UN commander in Korea and the Far East, Matt Ridgway, to take over NATO command in Europe, and Mark Clark to the Far East to take over in this theater. And at the truce table, the UN presented a peace package for an armistice. It was, however, rejected by the communists. But even though their chief delegate Neidell proposed an indefinite recess in the talks after rejecting the UN's peace package, they're already back May the 2nd. Nam attacks the UN package proposal at length, and then ends with what he says is an important concession. The communists would abandon their insistence that the USSR be a member of any armistice supervisory group. But he had a condition of his own, what he called a reasonable compromise on the POW issue. It was no such thing. Neidell demanded the return of 132,000 prisoners, insisting that no Chinese soldiers be left under control of the UN. His concession was that the communists would forget about the 44,000 former ROK soldiers who had been oppressed into the enemy army. The ROK is the South Koreans. Turner-Joy says the UN offer was an integrated whole, and not something where they can bargain over individual parts. So he formally rejects the communist proposal. I will quote Golden again about what this really all means. The significance of the communist move was that the enemy was now ready to rest the entire armistice on a single issue, that of forced repatriation of prisoners. This is true, and Joy does agree to talk to Washington about the proposal rather than being the one to stop the talks himself. But President Truman is not going to make any more concessions, and he has this to say about the POWs. We will not buy an armistice by turning over human beings for slaughter or slavery. The rejection of the package proposal has had another ripple. It has caused U.S. 8th Army Commander Jim Van Fleet to indefinitely suspend his Operation Chopstick 16, which was to be a two-division attack to drive the enemy from the Nam River by his ROK forces, backed with artillery and air power. So yet again, the negotiations make themselves felt on the battlefield. The UNC decision to forego limited objective attacks in the spring of 1952 meant that the 8th Army would continue to make contact with the enemy through patrols and raids unless the communists changed their tactics. From an intelligence point of view, patrols and raids often proved to be quite futile. Few prisoners were taken, and frequently, no enemy contact was effected. Yet, the planning and carrying out of these activities kept the frontline troops alert and gave them valuable experience and training under combat conditions. The last month or so, each regiment in 8th Army sends out at least one patrol each night, and also sets up several ambushes. Those nightly patrols are rotated through the battalions and companies, and you usually know when it's going to be your turn a couple weeks in advance. For example, K Company, 15th Infantry, 3rd Infantry Division, knew by the end of March that they were to patrol April 16th, a couple weeks ago. William Moore's 15th Infantry Regiment holds positions west of Yonchon, and Sylvanus Smith's Company K holds its section of front just west of the Big Double Bend in the Imjin River. This region is low hills and flat valleys and rice paddies. Their mission that night was to bring back POWs, but since the Chinese only had 3 positions within actual patrolling distance, there weren't a whole lot of options, and also the routes to these positions were well known by both sides. The 3rd Battalion Commander, Gene Welch, picked what was thought to be the position of a reinforced Chinese rifle platoon, like 1.5 kilometers north of the MLR, the main line of resistance. This is on a hill that they call Italy because it's kind of boot-shaped, and it's around 150 meters high and keeps watch on 3rd Division's activities to the south. Greece, another hill, is a few hundred meters to the east. It sort of looks like the Greek peninsula in outline. Company Commander Smith draws up his plans, and they are approved by battalion and regiment. They call for 2 rifle platoons and a machine gun section moving in 3 groups towards Italy in the evening. The machine guns and a rifle squad will climb Hill 128, which overlooks the valley between Italy and Greece. This is the security group. 1 rifle platoon will head for Italy and stop 350 meters from the Chinese. That's the base of fire group. And when they're situated, the assault group will pass through them and attack the Chinese from the southwest. Each group has both a radio and a telephone to communicate with each other and back with battalion. When the base of fire group is set up, 3 batteries of big guns will hit the enemy for a few minutes. Since the patrol was to be conducted at night, the riflemen selected to go on the mission were given intensive training in night fire techniques. Using battery-operated lights to simulate enemy fire, the riflemen were taught to aim low and take advantage of ricochets. Sand table models of the patrol route and objective were carefully studied, and the patrol leaders were flown over the whole area to familiarize themselves with the terrain. Since most of the personnel already had been over the ground on several occasions, the members of the patrol were thoroughly briefed by the evening of the 16th of April. They were also informed that a regimental patrol would set up an ambush on Greece that night. Equipment: the machine gun section uses heavy machine guns since they'll be in fixed support and will provide better indirect and overhead fire. The base of fire group has light machine guns with 1,000 rounds of ammo each, and the crews have carbines as well. Most of the riflemen involved have M1s with 140 or so rounds each and a few grenades each. They also each have nylon vests to protect against shell fragments. The weather: on the 16th, it rains like crazy, so the ground is liquid mud that evening. It's cold, though not freezing, and dark and windy. Company Commander 1st Lieutenant Sylvanus Smith leads the security group out at 9:10 p.m. through the barbed wire and minefields ahead of their lines. Master Sergeant George Curry heads the assault group, and 2nd Lieutenant John Scherzer heads the base of fire group. The assault and base of fire groups have a dozen Korean litter bearers as well to carry casualties. The security force climbs Hill 128 and sets up the heavy machine guns. The assault group is stopped, however, when a mine blows up behind them. Turns out, a litter bearer and a medic got a late start and then got lost in the dark and wandered into a minefield. They are okay though, because by great luck, the mine fell forward into a foxhole and blew up horizontally away from them. They have to stay put though until they can be rescued by battalion. But checking on them has cost assault half an hour. Also, when they go around Hill 128, 1st Battalion, who has the sector over on the right, keeps sending up flares for some reason, which light them up. So they have to keep hitting the ground all the time and wait for the glare to subside. They try to reach battalion to get them to tell 1st Battalion to please stop the flares, but to no avail. They also encounter 3 groups of burnt out huts along their route and have to stop and slowly and thoroughly check them for enemy and traps. So it's after 11 p.m. by the time they're close to in position at the foot of Italy. They do, though, have to cross a pretty broad stretch of open ground to get to the approach ridge to Italy. This they do in single file across the top of a rice paddy dike with solid footing, and then at 3-meter intervals they begin to climb Italy. But as the first guys start up, a voice in ordinary conversational Chinese breaks the silence. Then comes a command, then seconds of silence. Then a machine gun begins to fire, and then the chatter of several Chinese machine guns and the bark of many rifles from the lower parts of Greece. This is a Chinese ambush. However, they have set their trap in the valley between Italy and Greece, expecting the patrol to come along there, which they have several times before, and not along the ridge which they have used tonight. So a catastrophe for K Company has been averted. But they are still hurt. The first machine gun burst hits 4 men and kills one of them, the first UN soldier in Korea to be killed while wearing body armor, according to Walter Hermes. I have not been able to verify that one way or the other. Okay. The other 3 guys' wounds, they're not critical. And the assault platoon returns fire with everything they have. Curry gets on the phone to tell the other groups the situation, but the phone doesn't work, and the radio's been shot up by the enemy, and so that doesn't work either. So they are on their own. At his headquarters, Battalion Commander Welch is guessing that something's gone wrong, but he doesn't want to let loose the artillery until he can pinpoint his men. The base of fire group jumps into a stream to take cover when the guns start firing. The stream is like waist high. They're all okay, except for one machine gunner who takes 5 bullets in the leg. The actual firefight that night lasts about 10 minutes, after which the Chinese withdraw. Curry's guys have 1 dead and 3 wounded. No communications, no element of surprise, not all that much ammunition left, so they decide to withdraw as well and join Scherzer's guys. They do have to carry their own casualties, since the litter bearers drop their litters and head back towards the lines when the fight begins. After midnight, the 2 groups link up and can communicate with headquarters, but despite their pleas, the flares from 1st Battalion are still going off overhead, so they still have to drop, or be dropped if they're wounded and being carried, which makes the trip back a lot longer and is really rough on the wounded guys that keep getting dropped. Those who jumped in the stream for cover are also wet and freezing. They head for Company L's lines to go through the barbed wire and minefields, and at 3:30 a.m. cross into 3rd Battalion positions. But what about the regimental ambush group at Greece? They go forward and cover the area that the Chinese had used to set up their ambush for K Company and find no enemy remaining. But in the morning, they find some bloody bandages there and enough signs that the enemy had taken a fair amount of casualties in the night, as many as 24. Here's the thing. The patrol route was screened the afternoon of the 16th. So the Chinese set up their ambush after the screening and before the evening. Scherzer recommends that in future, a screening force be sent ahead of the main patrol to guard against more such ambushes. Like they'd go out during the day and then remain in position until the night patrol made contact with them. Well, I thought you guys would like to hear one of the everyday, smaller stories that shows that the war still goes on, even with no battles of any real size. Company K's experience was one of but hundreds of encounters by the 8th Army during the winter and spring of 1951 and 52. Some patrols were more successful and managed to bring back a prisoner. Others exchanged shots with the enemy and inflicted casualties, but made no close contact. Many returned with negative reports, for they had found no one to capture, nor even to shoot at. Patrol, raid, and ambush by the 8th Army was matched by similar action by the Communists, for this was the pattern of ground fighting for the period. So, the ground war now isn't really changing defensive positions at all or anything like that. And, to quote Walter Hermes yet again, the Chinese dragon kept to his caves and bunkers and appeared chiefly at night, while the American eagle devoted his activity to the sky and hunted mostly by day. There are, however, men in the hundreds of thousands who have already been captured by the UN forces. And as for that screening of them, using force to go into those final 7 compounds that refused screening weeks ago, it's in limbo since last week when Ridgway convinced the Joint Chiefs to not do it now officially. You might think that would decrease the tension on Koje-Do somewhat, but you would be wrong. The Provost Marshal of Far East Command, Robert Chaplin, does an inspection tour there this week, and he reports there is a dangerous lack of control in the communist compounds. Ridgway is worried about more incidents at Koje-Do, like the blow-up in February there that killed nearly 80 people. So he tells Van Fleet they have to maintain full control there, screening or no screening. Van Fleet is actually more annoyed that Chaplin told Ridgway before telling 8th Army his impressions, and he tells Ridgway today, the 5th, that in the camps there is no cause for undue anxiety. Let us be clear though, if you ask 8th Army officers, they will freely tell you that UNC authorities cannot just enter the compounds. They can't supervise medical stuff or inspect sanitations or put the prisoners to work as they might wish to. They exercise external control, and they do prevent any POWs from escaping. So by this point, there's a weird sort of stalemate there. The communists have internal control and cannot get out without violence, and the UN has external control and cannot get in without violence. Canceling the rest of forced screening is basically saying that the UN accepts this status quo rather than the other option of initiating more waves of violence in the camps. It seems like the next move belongs to the communists. And with that possible foreshadowing, I shall leave off for this week of the war. With tensions still growing at Koje-Do, the communists firmly rejecting, again, the UN peace package proposal, and patrols and ambushes in the field at company level each and every night. And a few handfuls of men on both sides die each and every night in those patrols and ambushes, and their families will know that they died fighting for their country. But will it be enough? The war is deeply unpopular, at least in the United States, and that doesn't seem unlikely to change soon. And the peace package was rejected. And what's going to happen to the prisoners? I understand pretty well why this war is being fought. And you guys have been here every week, so you get it too. The world is interconnected. But do mom and dad at home get it? What their son died for? Some do for sure. Maybe even most of them. But many do not. And that has to be the worst feeling of all. But maybe there'll be a new peace package next week, and the patrols and ambushes will end. Maybe. But whenever that happens, I will be here to cover it, and I do so thanks to the Time Ghost Army. That is what allows us to do our productions. You can join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. These are the newest commissioned officers, and Matthew Kochevar is the Army Member of the Week at this channel. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.